I remembered that morning vividly. It was a Saturday, the kind of quiet day where the only sound was the distant hum of a lawnmower from an unseen neighbor. I was on my small balcony, watering my potted ferns, trying to cultivate some rare species of moth in a controlled environment. My apartment, overlooking Green Valley, felt like a sanctuary, a small pocket of order in a world that typically made little sense. Alan Vance, professor of entomology, that was me. 40 years old, with far too many hours spent hunched over microscopes. A beetle, a common June beetle, I think, maybe Cotinus nitida, flew past, its iridescent green shell catching the morning sun. I followed its erratic path, a professional habit. But then, there was something about it. It just seemed a little larger. Not by much, maybe a few percent. My eyes narrowed. Have I been working too much, I muttered to myself, or are my eyes finally going? I shook my head, a small, almost humorless chuckle escaping me. It was a fleeting thought, a funny little misperception, nothing else. A few days later, the email arrived. From a farmer out in Kansas, a man named Jedediah. He wrote about missing livestock, and then a line that snagged my attention. "Strange-looking bugs, Professor. Big ones." Attached was a grainy, low-resolution photo. Underneath the pixels, I could just make out the silhouette of what looked like a locust, but thicker, broader. My eyebrows knitted together. It did look unusually large, but the picture quality was so poor, it was impossible to be sure. Most likely, just a trick of perspective. A rare mutation, perhaps, a single, isolated anomaly. I dismissed it. The world was full of strange tales, and I wasn't in the business of chasing chimeras. I had actual research to do, articles about rare nocturnal butterflies that demanded my full attention. I remembered reading a scientific paper later that day, something about common diseases affecting squirrels and birds in rural areas. Probably what's happening out in Kansas, I told myself. A simple, natural explanation. My office at the university was a quiet space, usually paper-filled, book-lined, a familiar comfort. I was reading a particularly dense article about insect behavioral patterns, the kind that makes your eyes glaze over if you're not deeply invested. Then I heard it. A faint creak, like wood settling, from the kitchen. Must be the wind, I thought, though the windows were latched. The building was old. Old buildings creak. That's just how it is. But then a smell. Something faint, very subtle, like old mold mixed with something cloyingly sweet. It was off. I frowned. I really should clean out the fridge, I mused, pushing the thought away. My mind was on pheromone communication, not spoiled milk. Then a soft tack sound, barely audible, from inside my closed bookshelf. I jolted. My head snapped up. I waited. Nothing else. Just quiet. My heart gave a little skip. It was a weird moment, but then the sound of an old building. Sometimes books shift, sometimes wood expand. Nothing to worry about. Nothing at all. Then came the sample. A few days later, a colleague from another university, Dr. Evans, sent it over. "Alan, you're the bug guy," his email read. "Another one of Jedediah's specials from Kansas. See what you make of it." My stomach gave a little lurch as I opened the package. It was a locust, a live one. I put it under the microscope, my hands a little less steady than usual. This wasn't a trick of perspective. This wasn't a grainy photo. This was real. And it was big. Easily 3 times the size of any known locust species. Its leg joints seemed too coarse, too powerful. But it was the compound eyes that truly made me cold. They pulsed with a strange, unnerving greenish glow, unlike anything I had ever catalogued. I carefully began noting its parameters, my brain reeling. This wasn't just a mutation. This was something else. Suddenly, a sound. My computer. It played back my own voice, tinny and distorted, a sentence I had just silently articulated in my head. This isn't an ordinary species. There was a delay, maybe 2 seconds. My head snapped around, my breath catching. The screen displayed a frozen close-up image of the locust's unsettling green eye, the one I had just seen through the microscope. Then it vanished, just a blank screen. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum against my sternum. I stared at the dark screen, then at the microscope. "No," I whispered. "It's just a software glitch. It has to be." My hands trembled as I tried to call the local zoo, rambling about an unprecedented insect specimen. They politely declined, citing overcrowded exhibits and a lack of budget for unidentified aberrations. A cold draft seemed to sweep through the lab, even though the AC wasn't on. My skin prickled. "It's just me," I reasoned, trying to calm myself. "I'm overstressed, that's all. Just a little too much coffee." After that, sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. My apartment felt off. I spent hours, days, scouring every scientific report, every obscure local news article. I searched for anything that matched what I saw. What I found was a horrifying patchwork. Reports of cattle disappearing in the Midwest, not just Kansas, but states hundreds of miles apart. Animals found eaten strangely, leaving behind large bite marks and sticky, fibrous cocoons. The more I read, the clearer it became. What I saw wasn't an illusion. These were fragmented reports, spread out, easily dismissed individually. I remembered a vague news report I'd seen months ago about an abandoned house in the suburbs. The camera had lingered on a corner of a room, an empty sofa with a distinct indentation on the cushion, like someone had just gotten up. It had nothing to do with insects then, a human interest piece about urban decay. But now that image came back, haunting me. That empty, indented cushion. I thought, if this was real, if my suspicions held any truth, then they weren't just silent. They were observing. They were hiding. And the world, the entire damn world, was missing something terrible. I tried to tell a few colleagues, but their eyes just glazed over. The local officials I reached out to offered polite, condescending chuckles. My mouth felt dry, my tongue thick. No words would come out, or perhaps no one was listening. It was just how things were, I told myself, accepting it with a strange, empty resolve. I had to see it, had to know. The accumulated reports, the growing number of missing livestock cases across state lines, it pushed me past the point of professional curiosity. It was a desperate necessity. I drove to a derelict farm in Alabama, one of the sites with the most unsettling, yet dismissed, reports of mutated bugs. The drive was long. The landscape turning from suburban sprawl to rolling fields, then to neglected, decaying farmland. When I arrived, the air hung heavy with a sickly sweet decay, thick and putrid. The dilapidated barn stood like a skeletal monument. Inside, surrounded by old hay bales and rotting wood, I found it. A colossal cocoon, woven from something that looked exactly like chitin, but on a scale that defied natural law. It was anchored to the wooden beams, pulsing faintly with an internal, unseen motion.
I shined my flashlight inside. I could clearly make out the form of a cow, entirely enshrouded, but from gaps in the chitin, thousands of small, milky white larvae squirmed, writhed, and a very faint humming sound, a low, sustained thrum, emanated from within. It was horrifying. A birth song or a death dirge, I couldn't tell. Nearby, on a rusty wall, I saw a small crack in the peeling paint. I touched it, and a flake of paint came away. I looked closer. The peeled outline on the wall was the unmistakable shape of a gigantic locust, its wings outstretched. My breath hitched. I turned, scrambling, running out of the barn, trying to call my colleague, Dr. Evans, again. My fingers fumbled with the old flip phone. The signal flickered, weakened, then died. No bars, nothing. I pushed the button again and again, but the screen just showed no service. I looked up, out into the darkening sky. A dark cloud was approaching, churning in the distance. But it wasn't a cloud. It was thousands, tens of thousands, maybe more, of tiny black specks moving with a horrifying coordination. A wave, a tide. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst through my chest. I knew then. I wasn't alone with this fear anymore. And this wasn't just a discovery. It was something far, far worse. I was running. I don't remember much of the exact route, just a blur of dusty roads, abandoned cars, and the constant, thrumming sound in my ears, whether real or imagined, I couldn't say. I ended up in a small town, or what was left of one. It was all a ruin.
Cars overturned, buildings gutted, their walls warped and twisted into strange, dark, chitinous structures. It looked like a nightmare, a scene from the end of the world. I stumbled into what looked like a cellar, a small underground shelter, desperate for any sign of life, any other human. The air down there was thick, cold, carrying that same sickly, sweet, moldy scent. I listened. Footsteps, light, scuttling, above me. My heart lurched, a lead weight in my gut. I tried to turn on my flashlight, fumbling for the switch. It blinked once, twice, a dying gasp of light. Then nothing, just darkness. No, not now, I thought, a desperate plea echoing in the confines of my skull. I held my breath, every muscle tense, ears straining. The scuttling stopped, right above me. A faint light, greenish and sickly, filtered through a narrow gap in the ceiling. My eyes darted up, and then I saw it. A single drop, thick and viscous, a murky green liquid, slowly forming at the edge of the gap. It hung there, shimmering, before detaching, falling, slowly. It landed with a soft pop directly onto my backpack, which I had just dropped beside me. I recoiled, a gasp escaping my lips, scrambling back into the darkest corner of the cellar. The liquid sizzled on the fabric, leaving a small smoking burn. And then I heard a voice. My voice. Distorted, tinny, like a bad recording. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, echoing in the confined space. The threat isn't what you see, but what you can't remember. My own words from some forgotten research tape twisting back at me. I stared at my backpack. The small, scorched mark that green drop had left behind was undeniable. It was the precise, terrifying outline of a giant ant. The danger. It was not just real. It was personal. And it knew me. When I finally bolted from that cellar, my car was gone.
Or not gone exactly. It was undone. A giant beetle, easily the size of a small truck, its shell glistening in the faint moonlight, had torn through it, leaving behind a mangled wreck of metal and twisted chitin. I just ran. Into the cold night, into the fields, no destination, just an instinct to move, away. I was lost, truly lost, in the alien landscape that used to be countryside. I ran past a welcome sign, or what was left of it. Torn apart, splintered wood, only the words, "Welcome to Green Valley," remained. A mockery. I looked down at the dark, uneven road, wet with an unknown residue. Under the dim, sickly moon, a massive insect crawled. It was too big to be real, a nightmare made flesh. It wasn't just passing. It stopped. It raised its head, turning towards me. Its compound eyes, multifaceted and dark, glistened, reflecting the moonlight. And in those eyes, for a terrifying, gut-wrenching moment, I felt it. I felt as though the entire universe was looking into me, dissecting me. I heard a faint hiss, a low, drawn-out sound, like wind blowing through an empty pipe, but deeper, resonating in my bones. From those eyes, I sensed a recognition, an intelligence, a purpose. I wasn't running from them. I was being directed. I was being led. I don't really remember how I got from that field. It's all a blur now, just the pounding in my ears and the need to move, away, always away. I found myself in some kind of abandoned suburban sprawl, the kind of place with strip malls and identical houses. No one was here, obviously. Just the wind, kicking up dust and something else. A smell. Earthy, a bit like mushroom rot, but sweeter, almost cloying. It was everywhere. I pushed open the door to what used to be a grocery store, the glass shattered, the aisles dark. My first thought, really, was finding water, a bottle, anything. The shelves were mostly picked clean, but some things remained. Canned goods, mostly. I scanned a row of green bean cans, my eyes already trained for anything out of place. And there it was. One can, right in the middle, had a small, ragged tear. Not a clean puncture, more like something had tried to pry it open, or maybe just gnawed at it. Rats, I mumbled to myself. Or bugs. I frowned. It was a stupid thought, considering everything. But it was just a can, you know. Something small, something easily explained. I reached for a can next to it, one that looked perfectly fine. No tears, no dents, just a little sticky. I wiped my fingers on my jeans. My throat was dry. I took a swig from the last of my water bottle, trying to ignore the metallic taste.
Just dirt, probably. A few hours later, I was perched on a stack of old magazines in what might have been an office, the back room of the store. The windows here were boarded up, light barely filtering through the gaps. I had found an old street map in a forgotten drawer, a miracle, really. My finger traced the lines, trying to find a way, any way, to get out of the city. To avoid the main roads, the ones I knew would be, well, you know. Suddenly, a chill, a sharp, stinging cold that had nothing to do with the ventilation, because there wasn't any. This room was sealed. My breath hitched, a small fog in the air right in front of my face. I looked around, my eyes darting. Maybe a broken pipe, a draft from somewhere I couldn't see. But it was too cold, too sudden. Then I saw them. On the grimy wall, clinging to a crack, were a few common houseflies, or what used to be houseflies. As I watched, one of them, then another, just dropped its wings. They fluttered down, tiny black flakes, leaving the bodies stuck to the wall. Small, dry husks, like paper dolls, stiff and curled. And then I felt it. Something brushed my cheek. Light, airy, like a strand of hair. My hand shot up, swiping. Nothing. My skin prickled. I swiped again, harder. Still nothing. But the feeling was there, a persistent tickling sensation, as if a network of invisible threads had settled on my face. "Did I fall asleep?" I whispered, my voice rough. "Or is it my own hair?" I rubbed my face again. No, this was different. This wasn't hair. This was something external. It was all so disorienting, like the room itself was breathing, pushing against me. I pulled my arms tighter around myself, trying to make myself smaller. The map was useless now. I crumpled it in my fist. Staying in one place was stupid. They knew where I was. I could feel it. That cold, that smell, it was a beacon. I had to move, not just away from them, but towards something, towards an answer. I remembered seeing a faded sign earlier for a radio relay station, maybe a mile or two down the road. Some abandoned government facility, probably. A long shot, I knew. But what else was there? The station was a wreck, like everything else. A single tall antenna still stood, miraculously, against the gray sky. The building itself was mostly concrete, a squat, windowless block. Inside, the main office was a mess of fallen panels and mangled wires. But the radio room, it was surprisingly intact. Equipment still glimmering with dusty, unpowered lights. I fumbled with the knobs, found a generator in a back room. An old diesel, surprisingly, still had some fuel. I cranked it, coughed, then it sputtered to life. A low rumble filled the room. Back in the radio room, the consoles lit up, humming. I grabbed a headset, thick with dust and probably mold, and slapped it on. Only static. A harsh, aggressive hiss that grated on my ears. I slowly, carefully turned the large tuning dial. The static shifted, warbled. Then it happened. The hiss started to lose its randomness. It became rhythmic. A dry, rustling sound, like leaves skittering across pavement, but multiplied 1,000,000 times over. It grew, filling the headphones, filling the room. It was the sound of wings. Millions of them. My heart hammered against my ribs, a panicked drum inside my chest. I licked my lips, tasting dust. Is anyone there?" I forced out, my voice thin, reedy, into the microphone. The rustling grew louder, a wave of unseen sound crashing against my eardrums. And then a weight, a pressure, invisible, pushing in on me from all sides. My ears popped, a dull ache behind my eyes. I instinctively clutched my head. What the hell was happening? I looked down at the console, my hands trembling. From a thin, dark crack in the concrete floor, under the desk, something emerged. A leg. Thick, segmented, black. Then another, and another. Slowly, deliberately, a giant ant crawled out. It was easily key-high, its chitin a dull, oily black. It didn't scuttle. It moved with a terrifying grace, its antenna twitching, sweeping the air. It stopped a few feet from me, its head tilted slightly. Its multifaceted eyes, dark and unreadable, seemed to fix on me. And then I heard it. My own name. From the radio. Alan. It wasn't a voice, not really. It was a scramble, a distortion of the static, of the rustling wings, somehow forming the syllables.
A fractured whisper, crackling and hissing, utterly inhuman, yet undeniably my name.
It sounded synthesized, like a word plucked from the airwaves and twisted, repurposed. My blood ran cold. My hands flew off the console, knocking the headset to the floor. No, it couldn't be. It was just an interference, a weird burst of radiation. But the ant, it didn't move. Its antennae still twitched, pointed at me, as if it was listening to the very sound it had just produced, as if it was waiting for my answer. I backed away, stumbling on a loose wire. The denial, the careful rationalizations, they shattered. This wasn't random. This was personal. I ran out of the station, away from that sound, away from that thing. I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs ached. I ended up in some kind of residential neighborhood, though it was hard to tell. Every other house was a collapsed ruin, or worse, warped into a strange, segmented, chitinous structure, like a bad dream made solid. I crashed into a gutted house, desperate for somewhere to just breathe, somewhere safe, or what I hoped might be safe. Amongst the debris, a small leather-bound book lay open on an overturned table, a diary, someone's personal record. I picked it up, my fingers smudged with dust and something sticky. I turned the brittle pages, scanning, reading entries about mundane daily life. Then the slow creep of unease. Strange buzzing noises at night, one entry read. My headache just won't go away. Then, a few pages later, scrawled in a shaky hand. Harold, my neighbor, he walked by today, looked at me and grinned. Said, "Lovely weather, isn't it? So nice and sunny." But I was looking out the window, and it was pouring, just a sheet of rain. He must have been sick. My stomach dropped. I remembered that day, the rain, a cold, hard downpour that had lasted for hours. I had seen it, I had felt it. But Harold, and maybe entire neighborhoods, had seen the sun. My hands began to shake, the diary almost slipping from my grasp. It wasn't just a physical threat. It wasn't just about destroying us. They were twisting reality itself. They were making people see things that weren't there, making them deny what was right in front of them. And I was one of the few who still saw the rain. A cold, chilling realization settled over me, heavier than any physical burden. The world hadn't just changed. It had been overwritten. And I, the one who tried to warn everyone, was just a voice screaming into a hurricane, unheard, unheeded. The thought was like a hollow ache spreading through my chest. What was the point then? What was the damn point? I needed to understand. That's what kept me moving. Not hope, not really, just a desperate, burning need to know. That feeling from the beetle's eyes, the sense of being directed, it had changed from fear into a strange, morbid curiosity. I pushed deeper into what used to be a sprawling state park, now a scarred, alien landscape. The ground beneath my feet changed. It became harder, slicker, covered in layers of glossy black material. Chitin. The trees, those that still stood, were skeletal, wrapped in fibrous cocoons. Then, through the branches, I saw it. The forest canopy opened up, revealing a colossal structure. A tower, hundreds of meters tall, easily. Not man-made. It pulsed with a faint internal light, a dull, sickly green. Its very substance seemed to breathe, a living edifice of chitin and organic matter. This was it. Its sheer size was beyond anything I could have imagined.
A low, sustained thrum, a deep, resonant vibrato, emanated from it, shaking the very earth beneath my feet, making my teeth ache. And around it, them. Thousands, tens of thousands of humans, encased, hanging, motionless, like morbid decorations on a grotesque Christmas tree. Cocoons, clear in places, showing the vague, distorted forms within. And the insects, everywhere, moving with a terrifying coordination. Not just foraging, they were working. Giant beetles, ants the size of small cars, flying horrors with membranous wings. They were meticulously carving through the land, rerouting streams, shaping the hills into rigid, black chitinous pathways. The sky wasn't empty. It was filled with them, flying in complex geometric patterns, like a terrifying silent aerial dance. This wasn't just instinct. This wasn't mere evolution. This was intelligence. A collective will reshape the entire goddamn planet. I took another step, closer to the monstrous edifice, compelled by something I didn't understand.
And then I heard it. A voice. My name. Alan. Alan. It wasn't the distorted static this time. It was clear, warm, familiar. My mother. But it couldn't be. My mother, she was gone. She had been sick for years, frail. This voice, it was strong, young. It stirred a pain in me that was almost unbearable, a memory of a time long, long ago. I looked up at the super cocoon, my eyes stinging. And then, from a fissure in the chitinous shell, something emerged. A face, fresh, youthful, impossibly beautiful. My mother's face, exactly as she looked in her prime, in those old photographs I still kept, the ones that were now meaningless. She smiled, a gentle, loving smile. "You found us, my love," she said, her voice full of tenderness, echoing from the very heart of the hive. But her eyes, oh God, her eyes, they weren't blue like I remembered. They were a vivid, unsettling green, like the locusts I'd seen under the microscope, that first horrifying specimen. Those eyes pulsed with an eerie, internal light. I stood there, frozen. Not by fear, not anymore. Fear was too small, too human for this. This was something else. She took a step closer, slowly, gracefully. Her hand, so soft, so delicate, reached out. It rested on my cheek. The skin, impossibly smooth, felt cold, like stone. A profound sense of wrongness enveloped me, a betrayal of everything I knew about touch, about warmth, about a mother's embrace. "Con yêu, con đã thấy rồi chứ?" she whispered, her voice still achingly familiar, yet laced with something ancient, something alien. "Con đã hiểu rồi chứ? Con người chỉ là nguồn tài nguyên. Đã đến lúc hệ sinh thái này phải được tái cấu trúc. Chúng ta sẽ xây dựng lại." I looked into those green eyes. I saw no sadness, no suffering, no love. Just a deep, cold, utterly indifferent intelligence. It peered through me, dissecting me, understanding me in a way no human ever could. I had no reaction left, no scream, no fight, just stillness. Everything I had known, everything I had believed, every single tenet of my existence had utterly crumbled. There was nothing left to hold on to. Her cold hand didn't retract. Instead, her fingers curled around mine, not in comfort, but in a firm grasp.
She began to lead me, not dragging me, but guiding me, towards the base of the super cocoon, where the thousands of human forms hung, waiting. She turned her head slightly, her young, beautiful face still smiling, that inhuman, green-eyed smile. "Don't worry, my son. You will be part of us, Thoy." My knees buckled. I fell to the ground, my eyes fixed on the chitinous shell, already growing, extending, weaving around my body. I didn't resist. My gaze lifted to the sky, to the swirling, patterned clouds of countless insects blotting out the sun. I knew then. The earth was not ours anymore. There was only this now, the chilling, undeniable acceptance. A new era had begun. A grim, terrifying chorus of chitin, pheromones, and the boundless will of a hive mind. And humanity? We were just the last, fading note in its terrible song of rebirth.